Do you have a particular area of your business that just fascinates you? Perhaps it's a technical aspect of construction. Perhaps it's the idea of how the geographic area that you're in can be developed and you're really committed to learning more about that. Well, for me, one of the things that fascinates me is marketing. I've been in sales and marketing my whole life, and I feel like I'm just getting started figuring out what it's all about. And that's why I'm always happy to get experts in marketing on Construction Genius, because it's something that we can always learn more about. And my guest today is Wayne Mullins. He is the founder of Ugly Mug Marketing, and he is the author of this book, Full Circle Marketing. There it is. And he is a returning visitor to Construction Genius. Links in the show notes to our other episodes. The reason I have Wayne back on is this. He knows what he's talking about. He speaks in straightforward language that we can all understand. And he generously gives insights that you can use right away to improve your marketing. Today, we talk about the A.I.D.A framework. It's a framework from 1910 that is still relevant today. A.I.D.A is an acronym that we'll explain during our conversation. What I'd like you to do is to pay close attention to how this framework can fit in with your marketing messages and think about how it may be able to influence the way you communicate so that you can attract and retain more of your ideal customers. Please share this interview with other people who you think would benefit from it. Feel free to give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. And again, check out Wayne's book. I don't do lots of plugging on Construction Genius, but I'm going to plug this sucker because it's a good book. It's nice and short. It gets right to the point, and you need to check it out. Enjoy my chat with Wayne. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Wayne, welcome back to Construction Genius.
How's it going, Eric? Thank you again so much for the opportunity to be back. Looking forward to this.
Well, I bring you back because I like to have experts on the show who know what they're talking about.
Well, I take that as an honor that you would think that of me. And again, I always enjoy our conversations because you truly get marketing. And so few people that I have the privilege of speaking with on podcasts really understand marketing. Most of them come from different aspects of business. But for someone who can truly understand and speak the language, it's like I could sit and visit all day. So thank you.
That's terrific. And it's funny because I very much view myself, I think like in my mind, I think, man, I got sales nailed pretty well, but marketing, marketing seems like something where you've always got stuff to learn. So I'm so glad to be able to learn a little bit more today. I'd like to just kick off with this idea of A.I.D.A. A.I.D.A. What is A.I.D.A. and why is it important for marketing strategy?
Absolutely. So, the world we live on today, and Eric, it's always changing, rapidly changing. It's, we can't hardly keep up with all the tricks, the tactics, the strategies that are coming out. We go to a convention or we look at something online and it's like, oh, we really should try that, do that thing. A.I.D.A. is this thing that's been around since 1910. It was a marketing strategy that was tested way back early 1900s. It was first written about in 1910. Now, for some people listening or watching, they're probably thinking, okay, I'm done with this. Like 1910, today's 2021, 2022. Like what's going on here? This can't be useful. But the beauty of this little framework is that no matter what you overlay this framework on top of, it will improve it. So in your marketing space, whether it's writing copy for your website, whether it's working on a brochure, whether it's whatever, radio, television, you name it, this framework is going to improve it. And it's also going to give you some specific points where you can look to make adjustments and improvements.
Excellent. So Let's break that down. A.I.D.A is an acronym. Can you explain the acronym, please?
Absolutely.
Just give us the overview to begin with here.
Yep, absolutely. So the first one is A, and that stands for attention. And we like to say where attention goes, money flows. The next letter in that is interest. People are always interested in their interest, not in our products or services.
Yes.
That's a key distinction right there.
Yep.
The next letter is D for desire. Desire actually starts when we understand, when a consumer understands that there's something better available. There's something better is possible out there in the world. And then the last letter again is an A, and that stands for action. We as marketers, as business owners, have to give the people that we're marketing to a singular, clear, specific step on what to do next. So that's the quick overview.
Okay. Now, let me just back up. I do have a question. And the reason I'm asking this question is because you mention it in the book that you've just published, which is Full Circle Marketing. Since I've had Wayne on a couple of times, audience, I don't mind plugging his stuff because it's awesome. So Full Circle Marketing, we'll get to another plug later on. But something you say in there that caught my attention, and I want to explore it with you before we dive into the detail here, because I think people miss this sometimes. Can you just give us the difference in your mind between marketing and branding?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think of marketing, I define it as this. Marketing is your ability, Eric, to both attract and to keep a customer. Right. So there's two components in that. Branding isn't actually what we believe to be true about ourselves. Branding is what the marketplace believes to be true about us. And so oftentimes we sit around these and have these conversations about, what's our brand represent? What do we stand for? How are we going to position ourselves? All these things. We're talking about our brand. But the truth is, our true interpretation, or the true interpretation of our brand, is what the people in the marketplace believe to be true about us.
So then, with that being said, what place is there for all of the branding efforts that people go through? So for instance, when I'm recording this, Zuckerberg was up there yesterday talking about basically a new brand for Facebook for whatever reason, what place does branding have? That the image and the colors and all that kind of stuff. How much importance do you put on that in terms of the idea of attracting and retaining customers?
Sure. What I would say is this, Eric, that perception becomes reality, right? Perception becomes reality. So in branding, it is our attempt to influence what the marketplace believes about us. Now, that sounds kind of counterintuitive to what I just got through saying, but let me clarify. Here's the distinction or the difference. We as business owners or as marketers, our view is so often jaded. We believe we're providing, this superior level of service. And the reality is we may not be. So we assume that our brand is here. We assume our brand is, the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons level of service. Right. But the marketplace doesn't agree with that. And that is where we can have the fancy logo, the nice colors that try to make us look like Ritz-Carlton or whatever, the gold standard is in the industry. But if our actual service, the way we operate, the way we provide our services doesn't match that, then it's in vain. Like we've done this for no reason.
Right. Okay. All right. Now, I want to go back to A.I.D.A then. Attention, interest, desire, action. And this is a practical, usable framework. So let me just ask you to start with here. Why is it difficult to get people's attention?
I would say that the reason it's difficult to get people's attention is because we copy what our competitors do. And when we copy what our competitors do, we blend in. I call it actually marketing incest. We look around and we say, oh, well, they're successful. They're doing this type of ad. We're going to do something similar, but we're going to try to make it a little bit better, right? We're trying to make it more creative or try to use a better photo, or we're going to get drone footage instead of just still shots or whatever the thing may be. And so until we're willing to stand out, until we're willing to actually look at what everyone else is doing and go the opposite direction, we're not going to stand out. So jumping back to your thing about Facebook and then the name change, whether it's a good idea, a bad idea, a terrible idea, it doesn't matter. Mark Zuckerberg just consumed probably hundreds of millions of dollars worth of free publicity all over some stupid name change.
Right.
Therefore, he captured attention by doing something completely unexpected, completely out of the blue. So what I would say is the people listening and watching this, look for those opportunities. Look for the opportunities to stand out. Now, does everyone think Mark Zuckerberg's idea to change the name, or whoever decided that in the company to change the name, is smart and brilliant? No. Half the world thinks they're idiots and they're stupid. Why do this?
Right.
But it doesn't matter. They've captured the attention. Okay,
so let's explore that, because I can think of, folks on that are listening to this. They're construction company owners and they run construction companies, and they might be saying, Wayne, I don't really want to stand out in a way like that, where half the people are going to say you're an idiot and half the people are going to say I'm kind of cool. So how do you? I want everyone to like me. I want everyone to think I want to do business with that construction company. Is that just the wrong approach to take?
It's the wrong approach until we get crystal clear about who exactly we want to serve, right? That's the customer avatar. What does your ideal customer look like? So anybody that has that thought running through their head, number one, you're approaching business, you're approaching marketing with a scarcity mindset, right? You believe that if you somehow offend somebody, you do something that causes somebody to look away, to walk away, to whatever it may be, that now you're out of one option, right? You're one less. That's a scarcity mindset with our marketing. The flip side of that, the converse side to that, says, I only want to speak in a way that's going to resonate, that's going to capture the attention in a positive way of the people we love to work with and we love to serve.
I have one more question I do want to ask you about attention. You've kind of answered it already, but let me just ask it again. What are ineffective ways that people seek attention? You've already touched on imitation. That's one. Can you give us a couple more?
Yeah. So, if you want to be ineffective at capturing attention, number one would be to dilute your messaging. In other words, if you could go into a certain category or into a certain publication or into a certain avenue with your marketing, and be very strong there, but it would require a large chunk or a large percentage of your budget, don't dilute your budget and do a bunch of little things. Look for those big splashes. I would argue that it's better to have 3 or 4 huge splashes in a year than little tiny trickles all along throughout the year. So that would be another, I think, important point, is look for those opportunities to really pour fuel to the fire, if you will.
Okay. So attention is the first step. And in order to get attention, you have to be willing to stand out. But then with interest, you want to be able to stand out with the people that you want to work with. And so let's talk about that. You mentioned the customer avatar. Please explain what you mean by that.
Absolutely. So the customer avatar, if you think of all the clients that you've served, if you were to go through and say, okay, what are the core characteristics of our perfect ideal client? In other words, are they married? Are they single? What's their family life like? Vehicles that they drive? What do they do for hobbies? You want to go through and answer all of these types of questions. And the reason is this. I sincerely believe that the number one, if there was ever such a thing as a marketing secret, that the word empathy would be that secret. When you can actually have true empathy, not manufactured, not fake, but when you have true empathy for your customers, for your clients, everything else changes for you, because the way you communicate changes, the way you serve changes, and that is the ultimate ripple effect in marketing. Okay, so just for the sake of the conversation, define empathy for me in your mind. What are you thinking here? Sure. So I think sometimes when people think of the word empathy, they think of acknowledging the way somebody else feels or what they're going through. Like, oh, I see that you're going through, hard time, difficult time, things are great, whatever it may be. Right. But I would define empathy as, one, acknowledging whatever they're going through, but number two, actually feeling what they feel in that moment. And that is why it's so difficult to have genuine, true empathy. Because genuine, true empathy, Eric, requires that we know our customers, our clients, at a level that is beyond superficial, which ties all the way back into that whole customer avatar. It's so important that we define our ideal customer, that we know everything about them. Because number one, it goes back to that attention thing. Then when we are going out to capture attention, we know where to put that attention, right? We know where to put the messaging so that It captures the attention of the right people.
Okay, so then how am I to start to build this avatar that you're talking about so that I can focus in my message and grab attention of my ideal client?
The simplest place to start is actually just go back through, make a list, write down, what are the top 10 clients that you've worked with? Your favorite, they were pleased, everyone was pleased, it was a great experience.
Yep.
And then begin going through and asking some of those very basic questions, work life, family life, live, geography, all of this. I have a whole list of questions that we go through when we're working on customer avatars.
Do you have a resource for that? Is there something that someone can get to help with that?
Yeah, I can get you the link and you can put it in the show notes.
Perfect. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. Go ahead, please.
Yep. So instead of me trying to rehash all those questions, we can just give it to them to download. But the other part of this exercise, when we truly understand what our clients are interested in, we do this exercise called the Magic Journal or the Magic Journal page. So imagine for a second, Eric, that your ideal client gets up in the morning and they're going to stumble over to their desk. They're going to pull out their journal and they're going to sit down to write a page, right? So they're wiping the sleep from their eyes. Maybe they have a cup of coffee in their hand and they're sitting down to write a page in their journal. And they open it up and somehow, some way, the page is already filled out. They're like, did my kid do that? Like, what is this? They start reading and it is as if they wrote that page. And they begin wondering, how did this get here? Who knows me so well that they understand my feelings? They understand my desires. They understand what my life looks like today, right? That is the power of what we call the Magic Journal page. You write a page as if you're writing a page from your ideal client, from their journal. From their journal. And what that does, Eric, if you do that exercise and then you go sit down to write your ads or your copy or the text on your website, you write it from a completely different perspective and through a completely different lens. It completely shifts, unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, literally, you can have somebody sit down and write text for their webpage, tell them to write a couple hundred words. You then bring them through that exercise, have them go write words for another page, blown away completely different.
Interesting. And so if I'm coming from that understanding of the customer's perspective and I do have that genuine sense of empathy for them, then that will be the key to me getting their interest, because then I'll be speaking their language. And when they come across that on my webpage or my advertisement, it'll click with them. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly it.
What are in a good marketing message that does grab someone's interest? It's one thing if somebody knows where I'm coming from, but as a business owner, I've got certain problems that I'm looking to solve or certain things that I'd like to achieve. What are the basic problems that a business faces that should be emphasized in marketing on a consistent basis in your mind?
Yeah, I think it's going to vary slightly based on industry and based on the type of client that you're going to serve, right? Because they have different things that are taking place in their lives. So if it's municipal, those interests are slightly different than if it's commercial construction project. Right. And even within those groups, it's going to vary based on who you're serving, right? The type of client in that particular instance. But what I would say when it comes to speaking to those interests, it goes back to, there's certain core categories, their fears, their desires, their goals, the things they want to hedge against or insure against. That's a huge one, particularly in the construction world. Yep. What are the things that they are hoping to insure against? Pride, reputation, their pride, their reputation play huge factors into those things. And so learning to speak around those topics are continual. Okay. So that leads us then to the D of the A.I.D.A. We've done the A, attention, I, interest. Now let's go to the desire. And when it comes to desire, what is so vital about that as it relates to marketing? Yeah, great question. When it comes to desire, where I love to begin would be with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. So anyone who's had like a psychology class back in the day, you're familiar with this. You're familiar with it. So at the very bottom of the pyramid, we have our basic psychological needs.
And
so
just
this would be food.
Yeah. And just for the audience sake, on the video, I'm sharing a screen now of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do you think I've got the right one here, Wayne?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
That's
good.
it.
Okay, so let's go through this now. So I'll put this in the show notes as well if you're listening, but if you're watching the video, you can see it right now. Go for it, Wayne.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just run through them super quick, and then we'll come back and talk about the importance. So at the very base of the pyramid, food, shelter, clothing, all those things. Right above that would be safety needs. So personal security, employment, health, etc. We move up then to love and belonging. In other words, friendships, intimacy, family, sense of connectedness. And then right above that is esteem. That's self-esteem, respect from other people. And then at the very, very top, that's self-actualization. That's the desire to become the best we can. That's the desire to contribute into the future, right? To make a lasting impact, things like that. So what's super interesting is when we overlay this with our marketing, number one is we have to ask, okay, where do we fall with our products or services? Which of these needs are we actually fulfilling?
Can you give me, can I just stop you then real quick? Can you give me an example? It doesn't have to be construction of a product or service and where it falls in this hierarchy, please.
Sure, absolutely. I'm going to use one that actually use in the book just because I think it paints an easier picture.
Great.
So imagine that you make and sell vegan bars, like nutrition bars.
Yeah.
Vegan nutrition bars. Okay. So your first thought is, okay, well, that's food. So it's going to be a psychological need, which is at the base of the pyramid.
Physiological.
But then, physiological, need. So then, that's where we begin. But then if we look above that, we have the safety needs, right? And we could say, okay, well, people who are interested in this vegan health bar, they care about their health. So to them, that meets some form of health safety need, right? It's better than a bar that's unhealthy. It's better than some other alternatives that are out there.
Yes.
Then if we really dive into it, what's interesting is that someone who's a vegan, depending on their level of, I don't know if veganness is a word.
Veganness is a word. We'll use it.
There's a sense of belonging to that community, right? So you could even go as far as arguing that your bar, your company, your products that you make helps provide a sense of belonging in that community. And then we could go up one more, which esteem. So they feel better about themselves because of what they're putting in their bodies, right? Your consumers. So now let's step back for 1 second and let's say, okay, so we're marketing this thing. How do we market this message? What do we market? And what's interesting is if you think about it, a vegan bar, you don't typically see people advertising or promoting, that type of bar down at the base level. They're not saying, here's a great food option. Like you're hungry, here's a great food option. Right? They're going to speak up above that. They're going to speak as high as they're comfortable speaking to that. And then what they're going to do is they're going to assume that their consumer automatically fills in the bottom of that. And so to answer your question, when we think of our marketing messages, we need to understand what is the highest level in this hierarchy of needs.
Right.
We need to then draw that line for them. We need to help communicate to that level for them. So if we were marketing that vegan bar, right, we could talk about how it feels to know that you're putting great things in your body, how it feels to know that you're taking the steps, you're taking the precautions to lead a healthier lifestyle, right? So we could build that self-esteem around already their sense of belonging, which is the vegan community,
right?
Around the safety for their own health thinking. And then obviously the food part is a natural given based on that.
Okay. So then it's interesting for, folks listening to this where the audience is construction. And as you think about the services that you offer, you should really begin to think about where on this hierarchy of needs your services fall. So for instance, if you're talking to a developer and they have an ambition for a tremendously important project that will really establish their legacy in the community, then perhaps you're marketing to them way up here in self-actualization. So it's not so much, they're not thinking so much about the safety of the project. They may be thinking about the profitability of the project. But if their ego is really tied into the legacy aspect, you need to be thinking about that as you're doing your marketing. Am I hearing that correctly from you, Wayne?
That is spot on, Eric. And again, it goes back to the very beginning. That's why I love these conversations with you, because you get it. You understand this.
Okay. All right. So this is something very important for you to sit down and to be. I can imagine a meeting of your executive team where you're sitting down with your guys and your gals and you're saying, here's a little framework that we can think of in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Where do we sit? How does that affect our messaging?
Yeah, I would highly recommend that you even break into smaller groups, work through this. Where do we, if we had to market at each of these levels, like, so let's assume that we can make it to the top.
Yeah.
What do we say that clearly bridges that gap for our clients? What do we say that clearly makes it abundantly clear? I know that's redundant there, but that we are speaking to them at that level, and then write short messages for each of these levels.
I see. Okay, excellent. But what you said that was interesting, though, is that if you do fall at multiple levels of the pyramid, you want to speak at the highest. And did I hear it right that you want to assume the levels underneath that?
That is correct. That is correct. Because we as humans, we automatically fill in those gaps for ourselves.
Right.
It goes back to this basic psychology. And again, that's why I love this whole framework to begin with. It is based on basic human psychology.
Right.
And despite all the things that we could possibly do today with marketing, this just goes back to the core way humans work, the way we process, the way we are persuaded, the way we are influenced, and at the end of the day, what we truly believe about ourselves.
Yeah. And I do want to make that emphasis. So let's say you listen to, I like listening to classical music. So I'll listen to Bach, and Bach was written hundreds of years ago, obviously. And that really impacts me. You can read Shakespeare, you could read the Bible, you could read the Iliad. These are books from thousands of years ago, and yet they still have an impact on us. And it's so important for us to understand in our communication that fundamental human nature is relatively unchanging. And so when we're looking at this marketing framework, the A.I.D.A marketing framework that comes from over 100 years ago, it's still tremendously relevant today. So let's go to the last step here. We've talked about attention, we've talked about interest, we've talked about desire, and now the most important one, perhaps, or the one where the rubber hits the road, is this idea of action. A is for action. So tell me a little bit more about this idea of action.
Yeah, Eric, what I would say is this is the thing that most people mess up on. Even if they're not familiar with the framework, they understand the need, like intuitively understand we have to capture attention. We want to do something creative. We want to do all these things. But we get to the point of actually telling the people, our prospective clients, what to do next, and we completely blow it. We completely miss the opportunity. And so when it comes to action, the question that I want you to answer is this: what is the next single logical step that we need this person to take? Not, we want them to sign the contract or, whatever that longer picture is. What is the single next step that we want them to take?
Yep.
Now, this will change based on the marketing piece itself, right? So if this is a piece that's out there to help bring in leads at a high level, right? We're just trying to get leads in the door. That action is going to be different than something that's going out to a warm prospect list. The action going to them is going to be different, right? When you have this in place correctly, this is what I'd say: your marketing, when done correctly, when you follow this framework, the A.I.D.A framework, it will make selling almost unnecessary. When you do your marketing correctly, it will almost make selling unnecessary. So in other words, by the time they get through this process, these 4 words, you shouldn't have to convince, you shouldn't have to cajole, you shouldn't have to twist arms or persuade. Your marketing has done all of the work for you. So you now simply need to tell them through this marketing piece, here's the exact step you need to take next.
Okay. So let's talk about that idea of action. And you've hit on it already. I think sometimes what I see in marketing is that there is no next step. And I think maybe this is one of the differences between branding and marketing, is that branding, it looks pretty, it looks awesome, but then, you don't know what to do. And so you just click on something else. As far as marketing is concerned, I think sometimes people jump too far ahead and they ask people to take an action that they haven't prepared them for yet. So it's like, I go out on a date with you and you ask me to marry you on the first date. I'm like, dude, or, please, that's not where we're at. So help me here with that idea of the right action for the right part of the marketing funnel that you're in.
Sure, absolutely. So, Eric, if we were just to think about a traditional sales funnel or selling cycle, there's kind of three elements that are required when you sell anybody anything. Number one, they have to know about you. Mm-hmm. Number two, they have to like you. Yep. Number three, they have to trust you. Okay. So that's core psychology of selling. Yep. The same is true of marketing. So step one is our call to action is when we want people to know more about us, what is that action? What is the logical action? Is it visit the website to learn more? Is it request the brochure? Is it, schedule a call? What is that next step? Yep. So then we want to build the liking, right? So know, like, and trust. We want them to begin liking us more. We want to, using the marriage analogy, we want to begin the courting process or the dating process or the engagement process. Yep. So what action do we need them to take there? At that point, we're probably beginning to shift into much more of a two-way dialogue, right? When we begin that building the liking process and moving into the trust process, usually at that point, it's reciprocal. In other words, they're no longer just doing exploring. They're not just clicking around the website. At that point, somewhere in that transition is where we are engaging in dialogue with them, whether that's email, whatever it may be.
Okay.
And then just that last one is trust, right?
Yep.
So when we're at that stage of trust, the actions are baby steps, right? So it's not like the first conversation we have with somebody, we're saying, okay, let me pull out the contract here and get you to sign it. Yep. It's okay. The next step is we're going to talk about financing, or we're going to talk about deliverables, or we're going to talk about scope, whatever that next step is. At each step, have a clear, concise call to action.
Okay. Excellent. And we've had Wayne on the show before, just so you know. So episode 137 of Construction Genius, we dive into a little more detail on this. And the title of that episode is The Natural Progression, Stranger, Friend, Client, Evangelist. So to get more information on this particular part of our conversation, go back and, listen to 137. I got a bit of a cough, guys, so sorry about that. Okay, let's wrap up here then. We've talked about attention, interest, desire, and action. What should my next steps be? I'm a construction company owner. I want to begin to lay hold of this framework, to learn it a little bit more and to put it into effect. What's my next step?
Step number one would be this, Eric. I think that we often have this tendency for complexity bias. We believe that if something is simple, if something is old school like this, that it can't possibly work, right? We are prone to complexity bias. So step number one is to give yourself permission to at least suspend that belief that just because this is old or just because this looks so simple, that it can't be effective. So we have to set that aside.
Right.
The next thing that I would say is this: take any of your marketing pieces. It doesn't matter. Grab one of them. Go grab it and walk through this framework with that piece in your hand. How did we use this piece to capture attention? Did this piece actually speak to their interest? Were we communicating the right language here? The next one, what level of desire? Were we even communicating around desire? Or do we completely use all facts and figures, right? Data. And then the last question, did we have a clear, concise, specific call to action with this piece?
Excellent. Excellent. So that's a great takeaway right there, is for somebody to get a marketing piece, sit down with it, and go through the attention, interest, desire, action framework. Okay, Wayne, you've been terrifically generous here with your time. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more, if they want a little bit of assistance through this process?
Sure, Eric. So the best place to go find out more kind of about this framework and the book that it actually comes from is yourfullcirclemarketing.com.
Okay.
On there, there's info about me. There's links to our other website, for our business services, all that kind of stuff. But that is where the framework, in that book, it goes into detail about the framework. And that's it.
Excellent. So yourfullcirclemarketing.com. And they can get the book. Where else can they get the book? Amazon?
It's going to be on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, the majority of the online retailers will have it.
Excellent. Now, let me just give another plug for this book. This is a cool thing. Most business books, you guys know this is true. They have one good idea and then they share that idea and then they pad it with 300 words of blah, blah, blah. This thing gets right to the point. Okay. We've got here 117 pages and they're not big pages. And so it is actionable stuff that you can use right away. So you should go and check out this book if you want a primer on this marketing discussion that we're talking about here. Wayne, terrific. I'm so glad that you've joined us here today. I really appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to your next book whenever that comes out, because that'll give us an excuse to get you back on the show.
Thank you so much, Eric. I enjoyed it as always.
Awesome. Thank you. Today's episode was brought to you by the Construction Conclave. If you as a construction leader would like to develop your skills and get involved in a community of like-minded construction professionals who are focused on building healthy teams, profitable projects, and long-term successful businesses, then the Construction Conclave is for you. It's a private, invitation-only group of construction leaders that are focused on developing their leadership skills. We do training every single month online that looks at how to become a better leader in a very practical, straightforward way. We also have other events that build community and camaraderie so that you can associate with others who are interested in developing their skills as leaders. If you'd like more information and to see if you qualify for participating in the conclave, feel free to reach out to me, eric@ericanderton.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and thanks again for listening.